everyone, I'm Lindsay and welcome to the Dose of Bliss show. Today we have a really exciting guest. He's all about making human connections and is set out on a journey to meet 10,000 people and spend 1 hour one-on-one with each of them. And I'm one of them today and he's one of mine today. So really excited to introduce you to my new friend, Rob Lawless of Rob's 10K Friends.
Thank you.
Thank you for being here.
Thank you for having me.
So
good to be here.
I wanted to just start out about what you're doing, 10K Friends. Where did this come about?
Sure. So this is my journey to spend 1 hour one-on-one with 10,000 different people. And it was born out of my time at Penn State. So I was involved in a lot of clubs and activities when I was a student there. And I met a lot of people and I liked that sense of familiarity. So when I graduated, I wanted to recapture it. And this was my way of doing that. And I studied finance. So after school, I went into consulting for Deloitte and wanted to do something entrepreneurial with my life. So I thought this was an interesting enough concept where if I actually sat down and met 10,000 people one-on-one for 1 hour each, that eventually it would have to grow into something cool enough to turn into a career. So that's kind of my theory. And I just love meeting new people. And I felt like after college, there was no way to meet new people without an agenda. It's always like, okay, it's either for dating or it's a business purpose. So I wanted to just open the door with people for no particular reason.
To be friends. And your background is you worked in sales. So a lot of people you would email and they would say, you know, take me off your list, which that happens to me with things I'm doing. And they don't want to respond. But with this, do you see something different with reaching out to people? What's the difference?
For sure. So I started this back in November of 2015. And at the time I was doing tech sales for this company in Philadelphia. And yeah, when I was doing sales, it's like you're reaching out and no one wants to spend that time on the phone with you. But when I started reaching out to people for this, it actually seemed like I got a pretty good response because I think people, we lack an ability to just, someone wants to listen to your story. So when I presented that opportunity to people, it was almost like they welcomed it. And the project kind of grew through word of mouth. People would meet with me, and then with Instagram, where I'm keeping track of it, they would post, like repost the photo to their page or to their story, and all of their friends would say, oh, that's such a cool concept. I want to meet with you too. And so it just grew in that way. And now I get a lot of messages from people who just want to share their story, and I think they just want to share that time as well.
So how many people have you met up with at this point? Because it's been 2 years now.
Yeah, so it's 2,500, and I think you're 31.
I'm 31. We got 31. The number. This is the start of our becoming friends. We're gonna meet after this and talk about it. I mean, I already in my mind I was like, we're friends once I saw Rob's 10K Friends. But out of meeting all of these people, what have you learned from all of this?
I always say the two biggest things are, one, that no one knows what they're doing with their life. We're all, and I think I mentioned, you saw this on my story maybe.
Yeah.
Like we're all just doing the best that we can with the resources that we have. I oftentimes think that people operate with the mindset that everyone but them has their life figured out. When I operate with the mindset, thanks to this project, that everyone, including you, doesn't have their life figured out. So it's okay to not, like to have those uncertainties. So that's the first thing. And the second thing is gratitude. So I come from a family from the suburbs of Philadelphia. Like my parents are still together. They live in the house that we grew up in. My older siblings are both doing well. I have a tight relationship with all of my family. And I was afforded the opportunity to go to college and like get a degree. And so I'm really grateful for having those opportunities because I've met people whose stories are much different than mine, where they didn't have those opportunities. Like I met a girl out here in LA who had to drop out of school because she had to move home to work to help her mom pay rent so that her mom could afford to live in their apartment. And it just made me really thankful that I didn't have to do those things in my life.
Yeah, and I read some of the things you were saying, meeting all these people has given you more empathy. So what have you noticed the change within yourself when you're hearing all these stories and how you approach life?
I think I'm more patient with people when in situations that would cause me to get aggravated with them. So I think traffic is a really good example, or if someone cuts you off and they're speeding down the highway. Typically you would just think like, oh, that person's a jerk, but maybe they are like trying to have a baby and they're trying to get to the hospital. Or if someone's driving really slow, maybe they were in a really terrible accident and they have a lot of anxiety when it comes to driving on the highway. So just knowing the breadth of the human experience from the people that I've met, I try to be a little more conscious of people and just the reasons that they could be acting the way they are.
And before all of this, did you think those things about people, or did you think kind of more surface level about meeting people? Or were you always interested about what's behind, the face of the person?
I think I've always been interested to an extent, but I didn't practice it as much. Now it's more so in the forefront of my mind more often, whereas maybe back then it was something that I knew but just didn't practice.
So when you started doing this, you had another job and they got acquired, right, by somebody else.
Right.
And so they let you go.
Yes.
So what made you decide to just take a leap of faith and do this full time?
Yeah, it's interesting. And it's funny because I equate it to the decision for me to do this versus full time versus getting another job. I put as much weight into that as I do like ordering lunch at Chipotle or something. But the month leading up to me doing this full time, I had just started getting press in Philly. So like 5 different small press sources.
And how many years had you been doing it up until then?
8 months.
8 months.
Yeah, so November of 2015 is when I started. I was laid off at the end of June of 2016. And in May of 2016, because of someone that I met, he worked for a publication called the Philadelphia Citizen. He wrote an article. The next day, another Philly publication took that article, repurposed it, put out their own. And then a TV station in Philadelphia, PHL 17, did a little TV spot on me that aired at like 6 a.m. on a Tuesday morning. And then a tech blog and another blog covered my story. And it was weird because it was all in like 1 month span leading up to me being laid off. And I don't think I've had that much press in that amount of time since then. So it was just one of those things where I had a lot of confidence going into that period of being laid off. And I had people reaching out to me. And then I also had the time to suit that demand. So it was kind of like this nice marriage of me being able to take this on full time and being busy with it.
So how do you make money doing this? Do people sponsor you, or did you save up money?
Both. So I worked for Deloitte Consulting for 1 year and 3 months, and then I worked for the tech company RJ Metrics for 1 year and 9 months. And I worked for a financial advisor in high school, so I've always been really good about saving money. So I started with 3 years of savings, and in my mind I always knew, okay, this is your budget to get this off the ground. So I just used that to push forward. And then in March of 2017, I started taking on partnerships, which for me looked like the first partnership was a pharmacy, Fishtown Pharmacy. It's like a mom and pop pharmacy in Philadelphia, where the dude liked my project and he said, I wish there was some way I could support you. And so he cut me a check for a few $100s, and I would put presented this month by Fishtown Pharmacy at the end of each caption, and I would tag his business in each photo that I took. So I've done that kind of partnership with probably like 13 different companies at this point. And it's really just small businesses in Philly who are part of my project who want to see it move forward. It's been like a dog walking company, a wedding band, a photographer, a weekly publication, just this weird mix and match of companies. But now I'm trying to knock on the door of some larger companies. So I'm in a trial partnership with WeWork right now.
That's really cool.
Yeah, and so that looks like me meeting people at their space, showcasing different WeWork locations, and I think like showcasing the community that they have, because their message of community and entrepreneurship fits really well with what I'm doing. So hopefully that will turn into a long-term partnership. But in my mind, it's always just meeting people, and by meeting people, the audience will naturally grow. And
people want to help you.
Yeah.
It just really goes to show too, and it's something I talk about on the show a lot, is when you authentically be who you are and go for what you want and you just do it, other people want to support you. Like,
right.
You're the biggest example. You got laid off from a job and you thought of it as like what to order for lunch. Mm-hmm. And then you just told yourself, I'm going to meet 10,000 people and I'm going to figure out along the way how to make this a career for me. And other people jump on board.
Sure.
And they enjoy it.
Yeah. I've seen a lot of generosity from people. Even I've driven across the country 5 times now. And on most of those trips, I've been housed by strangers in cities, and I've met them for my project. So it's awesome. I had a dude in Seattle fly me up to Seattle to meet with him and his friends.
That's so cool.
Housed me for the weekend. I recently had someone, because I went to a cafe here in LA, Nature's Brew, and I ran into someone who was previously part of my project. and we just took a selfie together. He posted it to his story, and then one of his friends reached out to me, and they're from Orlando, and they were like, hey, if we flew you down here, would you want to meet with our friends? I was like, yeah, of course, it'd be awesome.
That's very cool.
So I've seen a lot of generosity from people in that way, and also this way of just sitting down and enjoying each other's company.
Do you feel more fulfilled doing what you're doing now than what you were doing when you were working a regular job?
For sure.
What about it? Yeah.
What about it? I think I can see my impact through this. So for example, I started this year this thing called the 12 Friend Challenge. And one of the biggest things I've gotten through this project is an excuse to meet people for no reason. And so I wanted to give that to other people. And I wrote a blog post of how to meet 12 new people in 2019. And I put that out, and some people have taken hold of it. And I can see these people making random connections in one of the girls is in Lithuania. One of the guys is in Amsterdam, and then people here in the States. So for me to see people take an idea that I had and implement it in their own lives feels so much more real and fulfilling than me working at it on an Excel sheet or a PowerPoint slide in my consulting days.
So what are your tips then for everyone watching to make a new friend or to connect authentically with somebody?
Sure. So I think for new friends, if you want to get out and meet new people in a way that you're framing it in a goal, say 12 friends for the year, I think it's good to start with friends of friends because there's still a little bit of familiarity between the two of you. For me personally, I reached out to people on Instagram that I thought were interesting, like photographers that didn't have a lot of followers or musicians that didn't have a lot of followers, just people who work in industries that I was really interested in. Some of the first few people I met, I literally Googled Philadelphia artists. It would pull up their paintings. I would look at which painting I thought was the coolest, find that person's email, and send them an email. And I do think having a goal helps, because I think if I walked up to you on the street and I was like, hey, let's sit down for an hour for no reason, you'd be like, I don't really know.
Yeah.
But because I'm doing this project and you're helping me reach this goal, or if someone's helping someone meet 12 new people in a year, they can get behind that.
That's true, and that's true for any goal you have. If you know what you want and where you're going, you have a clear path to get there.
Right.
And so where does the 10,000 come from, the number?
Sure. At first, I just thought it was a number that was high enough that it would turn heads. Because initially the project idea was to spend 10 minutes with 10,000 people in 1 year. And that was just a poor idea from a naive recent graduate of myself. But over time, I realized that the fun would be in the journey, not the destination. So it turned into an hour with each person. And then it kind of tied into the 10,000 hours theory. If you do something for 10,000 hours, you're considered an expert in that field. Mm-hmm. So I don't plan to become an expert in anything, but I thought investing myself with that amount of time into something was a cool idea.
Yeah, and I'm really big on affirmations on the show. And I had read that you journal, and you had written down that you thought what was going to take you the furthest in your life was building relationships with people.
Yes.
So why did you think that, and what have you found from that so far, of that manifesting?
Sure. I wrote that down because that's just always been my personality. In high school, I was the nice guy. And I've always found that I'm more of a consumer of opinions than a provider of them. I get along with most people that I meet. If someone says something that I disagree with, I can just sit there and listen to it and try to understand it, as opposed to trying to come back over and convince them the other way. So I knew that I could sit with all different types of people and just learn from them and acknowledge them. And writing that down, I wrote it down in a journal entry from years ago, and it wasn't until a year later I was writing another journal entry, read that one, and thought, okay, this is really where my strengths are. So when I saw that, I knew I still had the idea to meet 10,000 people in my mind. And for me, that was the light bulb moment of, okay, why don't you actually take action on this?
So do you journal just to journal, or do you journal for goals?
So interestingly enough, that was 2 of 3 journal entries I've written.
It just shows how powerful it is, though.
Yeah,
you
it's
write
true.
something down.
I mean, you can teach yourself in a way by looking back on stuff that you've read, like I did. And I want to get into journaling, the 3 things that I'm grateful for at the start of each morning. But I haven't done any of that stuff yet. But I also feel really comfortable in where I am now. Like I feel a lot of gratitude, and I think I get a lot of those things and a lot of the reflection aspect from sitting and talking with people.
Yeah, and technically you're writing it down on your Instagram, so that's engraving the things you're learning, and you have a blog about it now too.
Right.
And you were saying earlier, where do you want to take this? Because you were saying a lot of people think you're interviewing people, but that's not what you're doing.
Right. I want to take it like all over this country and all over the world. I hope that when I'm done this project and looking back on it, that I've met people from all different cultures. And for me, it's just the genuine curiosity of I want to sit down with this person and I want to chat with them like we're two old friends catching up at the bar and we just haven't met each other yet. So for me, and I like doing things that way because there's an informality to it. When the people who think that I'm interviewing people, when they come in, they'll sit down and be like, okay, ask me questions. And I'm like, I don't want to sit and ask you questions. I want to sit and chat with you as a friend. And I think that gives people the ability to let their guard down a little bit and open up and become friends more so than like sitting with expectations.
Yeah, and it's so interesting that today people think it's an interview. They don't even know how to just come in and be like, hey, like you came here and you're just like, you just hugged me like we knew each other.
Yeah, that's how I do.
And I just happen to be a person that considers everyone my friend, and I just don't think they know it yet. But most people aren't like that. But you are one of those people.
Sure.
That is that type of person. So how long is it going to take you to meet the 10,000 people? Because you're at, getting close to 3,000. It's been 2 years.
I think I have about 10 years left. And I say that because I think there's always drop-offs in momentum. So most of this project has been conducted in Philadelphia. And I came out to LA because of a college roommate that was able to host me in his extra bedroom. But each time I either come out here or go back to Philadelphia, I lose momentum because people become comfortable with me being in Philly. So I'll have a lot of people from Philly reach out. When I come out here, the LA people have kind of turned their brains off to me being here. So then it's like I'm working my way back up. And I think with wanting to travel and meet people from all over the world someday, there's going to be multiple drop-offs in momentum. So I think like 10 years would be cool. And for me, I think about it more in terms of stability. So once I get to a place where I'm able to support myself financially, as long as I have that, it could take me 10 years. I'd be cool with that. It could take me 15. I'd be cool with that too. And I think that's part of just doing it to do it and enjoy the journey. It's not something I'm trying to rush through because I like sitting here and we're having this experience of chatting together, and this is fun for me.
We have a few minutes left, but I really want to know is, so you see this being like 10, 15 years down the line. So how do you see that when you get married and have a family? Are they going to come with you and make friends, or have you thought that far yet? Or do you think one of the people you meet, I don't know enough about your life, would be a person that you marry, or?
Yeah, I don't know. People say I'm going to meet my wife through this all the time, and I think that'd be a great story. But we'll see. Like, I do hope to have a wife and kids, and probably before this project is done. But I think that's kind of a bridge that I'll cross when I get to it.
Yeah, that's so interesting. So we only have a few minutes left. What is the biggest thing you want people to know about making personal connections, or about your whole journey?
Gotcha. In making the more personal connections you make, the more the world will feel like home to you. And I say that because I've met so many people in Philly, I've met so many people out here that now almost on a daily basis or weekly basis, I'm running into familiar faces. And I think for me, being someone from the suburbs of Philly that went to college in the middle of nowhere, to have that experience in Philadelphia and LA, like one of the biggest cities in the country, to run into familiar faces is really comforting. And it just makes me feel like I belong to this community. So I think by putting yourself out there, you're making the world more inclusive for yourself.
Yeah, I think that's really cool and so inspiring that you have met all these people, and I'm sure you've changed their lives as much as they've impacted yours.
Sure,
and
I hope so.
It just goes to show that you can still make real friends and people are still looking for authentic connections.
Yes.
So thank you so much for being on our show. Can you tell everybody where they can find you?
Sure. So I keep track of my project on Instagram. My handle is @robs10kfriends. I also post to Facebook and Twitter, but it's really just a link to the Instagram. And my website is robs10kfriends.com.
Yeah, you guys go follow him and be one of his new friends like me too. And if you guys are watching the show, you can see it on EverTalk TV, Focus TV Network, and my YouTube channel. So wherever you're watching it, please subscribe and follow along. And we'll see you guys next time. Bye.
Take care.